So to me, Bo Burnham is his own breed of comedian. In my experience, I can't even really compare other comedians to him because his style is just so unique and self aware. I first discovered Bo's comedy in 2018, which would have been my freshman year of college. I was introduced to his Netflix specials by a few friends of mine and subsequently his other music, and it just kind of spiraled from there. At that point in my life, it was exactly the kind of humor and comedy that I wanted to see.
Um, this first song is called A World on Fire. This next song is a little bit longer than that one.
He was able to seamlessly transition between genuine feeling, absurdity, and irony without even a second thought. Just a quick aside, if you haven't already, it would really make my day if you would like the video and subscribe. It really helps me out, and if you're not satisfied, you can always unsubscribe and let me know how I could do better. Thanks. Now back to the video. His style of comedy really resonated with me at a time when everything in my life was changing, and I had a lot of uncertainty about the future and about my life. I was being exposed to the real world, and Bo's comedy offered a space where everything existed in conjunction without sacrificing any of the intentionality at all. As I grew to enjoy Bo's content, I was told about his upcoming movie, 8th Grade. Me and my friends were all so excited to see more of Bo's style of humor from the perspective of, like, basically a child. We were expecting something that retained the lighthearted but genuine feel of Bo's other Netflix specials. When 8th Grade first came out, my friends and I all went to see it together. I was really conflicted after watching it. I didn't really know quite how to feel about it. It didn't really have the same energy as the other Bo specials. It was a lot more serious and heavy-handed. I could see his influence and his ideas and philosophy poking through, but if no one had told me that it was Bo beforehand, I would not have made that connection. So for a while, I was really confused and unsure. I felt the genuine moments in there, but I didn't quite know how to interpret them. Looking back on it, I do know exactly why I didn't like 8th Grade at the time. I wasn't really there emotionally. I felt like I was on the same path that Bo was on, but by the time that he wrote 8th Grade, it was a few years after his comedy specials, and he was further along that path and attained a deeper understanding of his own philosophy than I had. The more that I grew as a person, the more that I reflected on 8th Grade, and the more that I liked it. I was finally understanding his message, and it happened because of a personal change in me, not any change in the source material or Bo's commentary or anything like that. So fast forward to 2021, and I haven't really kept up with Bo's work. I hear about his special from some friends, and I'm really excited about it. By now, I've forgotten about 8th Grade and Bo's development as a person. I went into this special assuming that it would be, again, like his Netflix specials and have that same energy. I went into it expecting a sort of return to form for him and just his comedy, but from the comfort of his own home. By the time we get to the second song, Healing the World with Comedy, I was feeling less optimistic about what I was about to watch. Recorded laugh tracks, over dramatization, and quick self aware jokes, I thought it was a little bit too similar to Bo's other specials. I felt like there was a natural progression going on between the two, but I didn't feel like it was enough to sort of push Bo's humor to where I thought that it could go. It seemed like a natural progression happened here from his previous specials to this one, and it seemed like the jokes were honing in on exactly what was funny before while cutting out the fluff and filling it with some genuine introspection. However, by the end of the special, I felt intimately connected with Bo on a level that I had never expected to. There was so much genuine, real talk about mental health and about issues that he suffered with, and just all encapsulated in such like a neat little package. Like, he was able to literally condense his entire brain into whatever it was, an hour and a half of footage. It was absolutely incredible, and I never could have expected something like that. So, at this point, you might be wondering what I mean by beyond postmodernism. Well, To start with, I'd need to break down a few other things. Modernism is essentially a movement that started probably around like the 1950s, given like post-war sentiments from World War II, and sort of developed on for a long period of time afterwards. It essentially embraced a lot of ideals of optimism and, wit, and it's exemplified in a lot of our media at the time. For example, you have classic sitcoms like I Love Lucy and The Dick Van Dyke Show.
Oh, you great big Latin lover, you. Ah, you sweet, handsome man, you.
You gorgeous, exciting woman, you. I pass.
And others in that same vein, where essentially at the end of 30 minutes, everything turns out okay. This movement popularized so many of the tropes that we see today, and even on most of the ones that we see made fun of today. Which then brings us to postmodernism, which bases itself in irony, skepticism, and flat-out rejection of modernist principles. Here we see a lot of edgy humor poking fun at the status quo and societal expectations. No longer do we accept the ideas pushed by modernism, most notably the societal structure, the perfect suburban family, the work hard and you'll be able to solve all your problems, and all of that kind of stuff. We've been set in postmodernism for a pretty long time, and I'm sure that you've probably heard a lot of the jokes said over and over and over again. A new development in response to the tiredness of postmodernism is to just layer irony on top of irony, to make an ironic joke that in and of itself makes fun of another ironic joke that has lost touch with its own roots. Here we see a lot of meme culture and that type of thing. Skepticism becomes cynicism or nihilism, and you get shows like Rick and Morty.
Oh, really? Well, I remember you as a whiny little piece of shit, Morty.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah! I've got about 1,000 memories of your dumb little ass, and about 6 of them are pleasant. The rest is annoying garbage. So, why don't you do us both a favor and pull the trigger? Do it! Do it, motherfucker!
So, at this point, things would look pretty bleak. We've parodied, recontextualized, and made fun of everything that we assume makes people happy. And we're left asking ourselves, well, what does make us happy? What's the point? If the world is only full of skeptics, cynics, and nihilists, then what's the point of all of this? This is how we arrived at Beau's Beyond Postmodernism. He uses his comedy to find meaning in the emptiness of postmodernist principles. His jokes feel ironic, but when you think about them, are they really? There's so much genuine truth to his messaging and to his humor, just with a flashy, cynical shell on it. I'm hesitant to say that he's 100% unique in this aspect, but I personally haven't seen a lot of other comedians completely utilize this to the extent that he has. So Inside follows like a very neat 4-act structure. Act 1 begins with the time when he's sitting in front of the mirror and he says, "Hey, welcome to my special," up until his reaction bit where he's reacting to himself. The emotional climax of that would be when the "That's How the World Works" song happens and the whole sucko bit. Act 2 happens from the Jeff Bezos song up until intermission, with the climax being turning 30. Act 3 happens from intermission to one of his naked stand-up bits, with the climax of that one being Welcome to the Internet. And then Act 4 begins with his guitar song through the end of the special where he smiles. And the climax to that would be Get Your Fucking Hands Up. The overall climax of the piece would be Welcome to the Internet, and his lowest point in the story is definitely when he's just lying on the pillow surrounded by the mess with just the spotlight on his face. I think that you could definitely make an argument for him crying and saying that he is emotionally not well being his lowest point. Personally, I would have to disagree with that, because I think that that is in fact his first step towards becoming better. His lowest point is when he's feeling all of those things, but he can't express them. And then when he talks about it and he's able to cry about it, that's when we see him really start to get better and find his narrative through line. I'm hesitant to call this storyline fitting into any category, really, but if I were to have to, I would probably call it a facing the monster plotline, where the monster would definitely be Bo's mental health and, to an extent, himself. Eventually, in the end, we aren't even really sure if he's fully overcome it. So I wouldn't exactly call Bo a character in this, for reasons that I'll touch on later, but he goes through a very distinct development over the course of the piece where we see him get tested again and again, and it's never truly actualized whether or not he has completed his objective and overcome his struggles. This is one of the most raw human experiences that I've ever seen put to film, and that is no exaggeration. This film feels like a genuine look into the mind of a man who's tortured day in and day out, with unrelenting pressures and stresses that he feels coming onto him from the outside world, inside his home, and inside his own head. Bo has opened up before about anxiety and panic attacks that he's had on stage before.
And then it really, when I was 23, I had my first panic attack on stage. And
Really?
that was like, oh shit.
How did the show continue?
It continued. I've had
You pushed through it.
Yeah, I've had about 10 on stage, and
Which, as an actor myself, who has actually had a panic attack on stage, I know exactly how that feels. It's not a good feeling, and it's not even something that you can acknowledge. Because no matter what, you need to perform, and you need to complete your show. So it's incredibly hard to deal with something like that in a situation that's already very high stress. I don't believe that there's a single moment in this film that doesn't strike to the core of how Bo really feels. There's no fluffing it up. There's nothing there except for who he really is. The later into the film you get, the more you get exposed to this completely pure, unadulterated look into the mind of a man unsure of how he can keep a grip on his life and his sanity, all while dealing with a time when nothing feels permanent. The message of Inside is definitely a hopeful one. It doesn't guarantee that things are going to be okay, or that your problems will just magically float away if you have the right mindset about them. It doesn't even really say that Bo has improved his mental state at all. What's hopeful about this message is the idea that things can get better. More importantly, it's about how this will not be easy. In my opinion, that's a lot of what keeps people in this cycle of depression and self-destructive behavior. More often than not, I'll try and find a quick solution that will fix all of my problems without actually addressing the real things that need to be talked about. More often than not, searching for that quick solution actually drives deeper home the bad habits that then become more and more ingrained into ourselves. Something that Bo mentions in one of the songs is how he quit for 5 years because of his panic attacks. And how eventually he was feeling better and he was going to start performing again. And then his mental state slipped back down into the gutter as the pandemic went on. Which I think is a really powerful thing because no one really talks about that kind of stuff. No one talks about the fact that, yeah, sure, maybe I was depressed before and I got better, but I can slip back into that. It's not just a magic one and done. I didn't walk away from this film thinking that my life was suddenly better or that I would magically heal due to Bo's comedy. But more than anything, it made me aware. Things are probably going to get worse in my life, but at the end of the day, if I put in the work day in and day out, and I unrelentingly try and make myself better, that's the only way that things will become better. Bo created a really beautiful piece on mental health here, and he didn't sugarcoat any of the issues. He spoke on so many difficult subjects from a first-hand perspective. Sometimes the struggle never ends, but that doesn't mean that it's not worth fighting. So, a major symbolic reference that I found throughout the piece was the changing of aspect ratios. You can see the aspect ratio change several times throughout the special. Most of the time, this is achieved through a transition between the two, either scrolling in or scrolling out. We first see this change during the FaceTiming with my mom tonight song, and then again during the white woman's Instagram. The changing of the aspect ratio is often used to convey tension or uneasiness or tightness within a scene. When we see the aspect ratio first come in during the FaceTime with Mom song, it serves multiple different meanings. First, it obviously represents what it would be like to look at this on an iPhone, but also it represents Bo feeling enclosed and claustrophobic. He feels trapped behind expectations of a conversation with his mom, and how she has an image of him that he feels that he needs to uphold. It comes to a head when he gets upset and multiple images pop up, conveying his conflict and obsessiveness about the idea of screwing up and how that's affecting him when he gets mad in front of her. The aspect ratio returns to normal when he hangs up on her and he is relieved from the tension of remaining within these parameters that she set for him, and that he no longer pretends to be happy for her. The next aspect ratio change happens when Bo starts singing about a white woman's Instagram. This song had the most pure comedic value to me because almost every single photo that he made fun of in this was something that I had seen on one of my female friends' Instagrams before. This song is one of the ones that most closely aligns with directly postmodernist ideas, but there are sprinkles of going beyond that. The aspect ratio in this song becomes a square typical of an Instagram post. This comes to represent the superficial social media image that people try and put out there. We get a breakthrough from this when the aforementioned white woman running this Instagram writes a caption about her mom who passed away over a decade ago. For a moment, it's genuinely powerful and touching to see how she deals with grief and sadness and moving on with her life now that someone who she grew up with is gone. During this time, the aspect ratio widens out to the normal size again. But then, just as soon as it started, just as we began to get a real glimpse into how this woman thinks, it's immediately covered up again by this superficial and meaningless monologue about her boyfriend and her job and all of this crap that's just put out there into the world to show everyone that she's doing great and, all that kind of stuff that doesn't really touch on what she needs in life. There are a couple other aspect ratio changes throughout the piece. I believe during the React part, he changes it to match what a YouTube video would usually be, but that one's much closer to the regular size to kind of show that one, while still being performative in a lot of ways, is much more similar to how we actually act. Bo Burnham is an absolute master of parody. In this film, he parodies a ton of popular tropes and internet personalities. He uses this to exemplify blurring the line between genuine human experience and superficial imagery. In these parody segments, he makes it clear that he's playing a character, that he's making fun of people that post these kinds of things and act like this. But in my opinion, it's much deeper than that. I wouldn't exactly take this as belittling or insulting to the people that it's aimed at, but a glimpse behind their mask to see who they really are. Bo also got his start on YouTube, so it's not surprising that he knows exactly what someone like that would feel. Many of these types of people who have these big internet personalities often struggle with mental health issues just like him, and a lot of times when they open up about it, they aren't really taken seriously. They put up a visage of who they should be with every single post or video or whatever, and so people associate that with them and they're like, oh, there's no way that they could possibly be experiencing this. They don't really they aren't really allowed to be themselves because they don't feel like that's marketable. And to a pretty wide extent, they're right. They have people digging through every single aspect of their lives in a very obsessive way. Bo Burnham shows with this film that he is an absolute master of camera, of lighting, of sound design, and composition. The credits for this movie are incredibly short because it's almost entirely done by him. It is entirely written, shot, directed, and edited by Bo. And he shows that he is more than capable at all of those tasks. He's able to manipulate how the viewer feels in every single frame of the film, and takes us on this emotional journey that he's been living through. As the film goes on, we see Bo's beard and hair gradually get longer. This is a classic technique to show if a character is unruly or that they've been through a great hardship and are struggling emotionally and physically. While obviously this was a meta joke about how hair salons were closed and stuff like that, but it also came to represent how Bo was feeling as a person. He hasn't taken care of himself mentally, so as a result, his externals reflect that. We also see his room become more and more messy throughout the film. Camera equipment, instruments, lights, and anything else. In every single shot, the mess that appears in his room is carefully chosen and organized to be visually appealing and according to the rules of cinematography, while also conveying this disorganized and frazzled look to it. This, in my opinion, is very, very symbolic, more so than anything else, of Bo's mind. Even when everything is falling apart, when he's a mess and is physically and mentally deteriorating, he still sets everything up and organizes it in such a way to be easily palatable to the viewer without losing the meaning of it. A major problem that I've experienced when trying to speak on mental health issues is that not a lot of people really understand them unless they have personally been through it. By categorizing and laying out that chaos in a way that's easily palatable for a quote-unquote normal person to understand, that's the only way that you can really be taken seriously on this kind of subject. So no matter what you're going through, you still need to pander to the regular person. By organizing things in this way, Bo is able to convey how he feels without the audience just sitting there and saying, ugh, he's such a mess, or something along those lines. Or that he didn't really care about, the film and he was just throwing stuff together. There's so much intention behind everything in the shot, and it honestly hurts a little bit to know that he needed to set everything up like that just to have people take him seriously. It should come as no surprise that I absolutely loved this film. I think that it's some of the best film work that I've ever seen and represents a really, really raw take on what it's really like to be living through something like this as a person with mental health issues. I've obviously struggled with a lot of mental health issues in my past and a lot that come back very often. So watching this video felt like exactly what I would need, because having someone there who even just has been through what you've been through and is willing to talk about it can mean the world. It can mean the difference between life and death for some people, the difference between feeling completely alone and feeling like you belong. So if you're a person who's struggling with depression or suicidal thoughts and this video finds you just as Inside found me, I really hope that it can help in some way. I've included some resources in the description here. I've included the same one that Bo included in his film, Inside, as well as a couple additional ones. So if that is something that you need, please don't hesitate. There are a lot of heavy things that need to be talked about, and they're not easy to talk about on either side of the coin. Just know that there's people out there that know how to help. And it's hard to reach out to those people. But in the end, it's what you need to do. The path that people dealing with mental health issues walk is not an easy one. And no matter how many times you think you're getting better, it can always get worse again. In the end, there's nothing more powerful than having other people by your side. Hello, thank you for watching. I know that this is a lot different than my usual type of video, but it's something that I'm really passionate about, and I really think that especially mental health is something that doesn't get enough attention. So I'd like to focus on maybe creating more of this type of content. I had to take a lot more time to organize this video and make sure that it was really what I wanted it to be, which is why it took so long to get out. I will be trying to make more content like this in the future, so check back in if that's something you're interested in.